Yo, have you heard about Anchor? It's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Welcome, everyone, to the L7C Podcast NBA edition. Today, we are going to be giving our NBA draft recap. And when you're talking hoops, you got to have the hoop expert of the team. We got Mr. Evan Debo with us today. How you doing today, sir?
Good, Martin. It is finally basketball season. Finally. Again, I know we just ended it a few months ago, but it's been a year like no other. But excited to have all 30 NBA teams back this month, and it really started back on November 20th with the NBA draft.
Right, and that was November 20th, and the basketball season being back. I believe December and 12th is when preseason games start.
Yeah. So essentially, a week from today, we'll start having preseason games. So there'll be a handful, kind of in small markets. You'll see a lot of teams that are in close proximity to one another playing home and home series. Obviously, with in most cases, in all cases in actuality, no fans. But you'll see a lot of kind of, we'll call it mini bubble basketball. Okay. And we'll go from there, starting in the next 7 days. As exciting that is. Training camp started this past Tuesday for NBA players, yeah, we'll get a little bit more of that off season, but as you said, yeah, they all started back at the end of November with the NBA draft.
That is wild, and like Evan said, we've got a very special episode for you guys today. We got two episodes for you guys. This one we're going to be talking
a two-parter,
yeah. This one we're going to be talking about the NBA draft strictly, the lottery, the top 10, some of what we think went down that night. And then the second part, after we're done with this, you guys go over and listen to our one that we're going to be talking about the NBA offseason. We're going to talk about the start date, Christmas games, offseason moves that have happened. And we're just going to get you up to speed so you guys can get ready for the NBA season, which starts off in a couple of weeks. But this episode, draft, next episode, that's right after this, offseason. So with that being said, Evan, you ready to just dive into this draft?
Let's go. So top of the boards, we had
and with the Minnesota, a lot of people, they have Karl Anthony Towns, and just a side note, he is going through a lot. As everyone knows, his mom went through passed away from COVID, and he's also had 7 family members pass away through COVID. So we wish him all the best with him and his family. But he is a great player. They got our guy from Ohio State, D'Angelo. So they got the big and the point guard. Yeah, with Keita Bates.
2 guys technically with Keita Bates.
Hopefully gets more playing time this year, off a side note. But a lot of people thought they were going to go shooting guard. And the top shooting guard in this draft, but a lot of experts, was Anthony Edwards. He was the number 1 pick out of Georgia. His strengths, I've seen him play a couple of times. He is very explosive. He's a powerful guy. He's really good in transition. A lot of people were trying to compare him to a young Dwyane Wade, and Dwyane Wade himself said that Anthony could potentially be better, which is a very lofty goal, to be better than the 3rd greatest shooting guard of all time. And if it wasn't for LeBron James, Dwyane Wade would be the best player in the 2003 draft class. So that's some lofty goals. When I've watched him, he doesn't really play defense all that well to me. I think that he needs to improve on that, but I think it was the safe pick for the Timberwolves. What do you see when you look at Anthony, Evan?
I think when you look at this draft, which obviously was considered weak, there was a lot of talk in the top that Minnesota and Golden State would trade down, try to acquire assets for maybe a team that was a little bit further back, from the numbers like 6 to 14 pick area, trying to get up. There's a lot of rumors that was Minnesota going to actually take a pick, and obviously they did with Anthony Edwards, as you said. I mean, so Anthony's a big physical guy. He's 6'5". He's got a 6'9" wingspan. Really physical guard. He attacks the bucket with ruthless abandon. I mean, he's somewhat of a bull when it comes to getting into the paint. Can absorb contact, but I mean, with him, with some of these prospects and mostly, and honestly, a lot of these prospects, there's a lot to be seen. We had a shortened college basketball season. Especially when you've got these freshmen coming in too, you see them try to figure out how to be a freshman in college and how to be 19 away from home for the first time and everything else. And a lot of that gets cleared up in the NBA when they make the pros. But there are a lot of question marks with Anthony Edwards. Don't get me wrong. I want to make sure I say Anthony Edwards, in my opinion, was the best player in this draft, given all the information we had leading into this, all the scouting reports, everything. There was no better pick than Anthony Edwards. So the Timberwolves got to pair alongside D'Angelo Russell, Karl-Anthony Towns and company. A great pick if you're going to keep the pick. Where he needs to grow a little bit is plainly just some of the, I don't want to say maturity, but it's kind of some of the inconsistency in his mindset. So he takes plays off when he's not guarding on ball. You'll see guys slip backdoor screens on him, and sometimes he'll get a little lackadaisical. So again, it was an up and down year, learning a new system in college, everything else. So defensively, he's got some work to do, but obviously his shooting offensively is something that really needs to come along as well. So again, he's kind of a Donovan Mitchell, early on, attacking the basket. A guy who needs to develop his 18 feet and out shot. He can do that. And again, he's so young, only 19. So we'll see how the cards fall, but great pick for the Timberwolves here to pair with Karl-Anthony Towns and company. And
that's a pretty good young.
Things are looking good in Minnesota.
Nucleus. With the number 2 pick, Evan, who the Warriors take?
Number 2, James Wiseman. A lot of people saw too, same concept. Was Golden State going to trade down? Were they going to try to pair Wiseman and Wiggins and maybe some other pieces to try to get that next all-star looking, to try to extend Curry's run, who's I believe he's 30 now, I think. Into what the next 5 years is going to look like in the Bay Area. But nope, they're ushering in the new arena there with Mr. James Wiseman. So we only saw obviously a few quick games from him at Memphis. Obviously kind of plagued by some of the benefit issues of getting that, was suspended a little bit, then just called it a year before COVID happened, and I'm done. I'm going to focus on the draft. 19 in the short time we saw 19.7 points a game, 10.7 rebounds, 3 blocks. I mean, he is your prototypical big who can rim run, who's great defensively. Arguably easily worth that number 1 pick too. If they didn't have Karl-Anthony Towns in Minnesota, James Wiseman easily could have been the number 1 pick as well. But again, we're in a league where we're moving away from bigs. We're finding that you can find the Clint Capellas, you can find the Larry Nances, to come in and be your pick and roll rim runners there, and to set solid screens for your combo guards. James is bigger than that in stature and in how he plays. He's got great mechanics for a big. He's got a strong post up game for his age. At again, only another 19-year-old there. Really like the pick for the Warriors, and then unfortunately too, with the Klay Thompson injury news, James is gonna have to earn his stripes sooner rather than later, and be a key part of how Golden State runs things, setting hard picks for Wiggins and for Curry, and working on some interior passing stuff from the foul line down, with Draymond setting each other up. I mean, how those two bigs roll is going to be honestly more important than how Curry rolls, in my opinion, because we know Curry's going to Curry as long as he's healthy. So it's going to be those two bigs on the offensive side of things, doing the high-low, post ups, the some of the backdoor plays that we see Golden State. They're a phenomenal off-ball moving team. James is going to have to switch his game a little bit, as kind of a guy who likes the half-court offense and what little we've seen of him. But no, great pick here. By and large, again, he could have been easily the number one pick, just depending on the team that was up there. Nope, excited to see him as a Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, great. I really don't have much to add on that except for like the trade. I always thought that the Warriors were going to trade this pick. I know there was talks about packaging this to Washington with Wiggins and getting like Bradley Beal, another shooter, because he would probably fit the best in their system in terms of all-star shooters right now, but it didn't happen. The few games that you said about James, I mean, the guy is 7 feet, like 250, like 7'5" wingspan. The guy's huge. So I'm really interested to see how he could develop. I remember the bigs with the Warriors championship run, Zaza Pachulia, Andrew Bogut. So having a young guy like James who can run up and down the floor, hopefully with this Warriors pace, will be interesting. And Steve Kerr's a great coach, and I'm sure that they'll develop him in the way that he needs to get developed.
Martin, number 3, we like to ball here in the NBA of late. Charlotte took Lamelo. I think that was how most saw this going down after the top 2 were off the board. There was some discussion amongst analysts, really drastically one way, and then as they push closer to the draft, drastically another way, saying that they could see Lamelo really, really sliding, maybe all the way down to someone like the Knicks or the Pistons, a 7 or 8. And then there was a huge push, I think, by some of the ESPN contingents and some of the draft analysts over there of, man, Lamelo is the best player in this draft. People will be regretting this. And I thought that was kind of an interesting push. I mean, I've never been. I think most people, at least in our talking circles, would feel the same, that Lamelo was not better than James Wiseman and Anthony Edwards, but alas, he does come to Michael Jordan's Charlotte Hornets by way of the Illawarra Hawks, by way of that one brief stint in Lithuania for like a hot second. I don't even know if he played a game there, by way of Chino Hills High School in California, where we famously saw him do a lot of cherry picking on defense. I don't know if he basically at best ran from 3-point arc to 3-point arc in a lot of those clips we'd see, where he was dropping stupid amounts of points and stuff on that team. But we have our second ball brother in the league and second ball draftee to the Hornets. Martin, quick thoughts on what Lamelo brings to the Charlotte Hornets.
He's 6'7"
in his playing style.
He's an elite point guard. He did good things overseas. He can dribble. He can pass. He can throw outlet passes. He has magic. Call them the magic passes. He has great court vision. This situation with Charlotte, once it was the first 2 picks, it's basically take the best player available, and Lamelo was the best player available. I know Charlotte just got Terry Rozier, so it's interesting to see what they're going to do with him, if he's going to be maybe shipped out or regulated to a come off the bench role, because Lamelo, I mean, you draft someone this high, you expect them to be your future. So I think he will be fine. I think he still needs to improve his shooting, but I always feel like that's a Ball family issue with their shooting, 3-point shooting, free throw shooting. You already talked about the cherry picking, so obviously he has to play defense in the NBA. And he won't turn 19. I think he just turned 19, but just turned 19. So he could potentially still
just turn 19.
Grow. So he can fill out his body more, but I just think with this one, You just took the best player available, and Lamelo was the best player available. You already hit that during draft night. Everyone was saying that Lamelo was the overall best player in the draft. So won't hit 2, but I thought he was the top 3, but best player available. That's what MJ and Charlotte took.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a high upside pick here in my opinion.
Yeah.
Again, it's so hard to judge when some of those guys are not playing against kids their own age and systems with other people their own age, such as what the NCAA offers. Now, granted, like I'm really excited to see what this G League Elite team does as a new kind of almost like an NBA prep program, where you've got some of the 2021 guys all playing on a team getting paid like $500K a year in some instances to be a G League team this year. But playing in the Australian League and Lithuania and not going to college and stuff. I mean, sometimes it hurts guys' draft status. I mean, again, he went 3, but it's hard to judge where he's at as a player in a lot of places. So we have to really look at form and mechanics. Defensively, he's bad. I mean, he's really bad. What helps is the only thing. I mean, a lot of times when you're a taller or longer guy with he's almost got a 7-foot wingspan. 6'10" officially listed as per his wingspan, but that really helps you recover. I mean, when you're step late because your head's not in it and your mechanics are poor, you can rely on your physical size to help recover when a guy blows by you, to help with a deflection that really should have been a steal, those kinds of things. So I mean, that obviously bodes well for him. I'm going to throw out a name to you pre-injury that he reminds me a lot of, and honestly, I think he's a way better passer than this guy was. Now, granted, he had a really long career after the fact, but size-wise, at the point guard position and basketball IQ, I see a lot of Sean Livingston in him. I really do. Pre obviously devastating Clipper injury, and obviously he had a really great run. He played briefly, I think, for the Cavs in 2010, 2011, then was picked up either the next year or the year after by Golden State, where he backed up Steph Curry and was just an absolute problem for any opposing point guard. He'd get you on the block and that little nasty turnaround. I mean, he was very methodical. He wasn't as explosive or anything as explosive or a great passer that Lamelo can be. I mean, Lamelo certainly is a problem in the open court with his vision and his passing game, much like Lonzo is. But also, unfortunately, like Lonzo is, really struggles with his shooting mechanics. I mean, they're really bad. They're not Michael Kidd-Gilchrist bad for people, and it's effective. But I think he's got to get that cleaned up, or people are just going to clam in on him. And then you're kind of chasing the Ben Simmons route. But in Ben Simmons' case, obviously, otherworldly defender, passer, everything else but shooting. And LaMelo's obviously not that, and I don't even know if he projects that. But then you're kind of just you're one trick pony on offense as just a distributor only, and somebody who can kind of play off ball a little bit. So we'll see. Again, there's some other moves that the Hornets played. We'll talk about in part 2 of this podcast that we'll see how LaMelo will figure in here. But let's move on to number 4. Kind of arguably the first surprise of the draft. A lot of people really pegged, I think, the Chicago to take Deni Avdija, and in some cases potentially even take Tyrese Halliburton that high. However, they went with Patrick Williams, who was a kind of de facto 6th man on a Florida State team. Big physical wing. I mean, he's got all the NBA tools you're looking for. Just didn't play a lot. More of a definitely a working project, but I mean, he's got all the check boxes for physical tools that you're looking for in a Paul George type wing. So I mean, what did you think about the Bulls taking Patrick Williams and him going at number 4?
I was shocked. Chuck, who's been on the podcast before, big Chicago.
Chucky.
Big Chicago.
New dad, Chucky.
New dad. A big Chicago Bulls fan. He was very upset because, one, he didn't know who Patrick was. So that was a bad thing. And once he started looking him up, saying, how do we take someone the number 4 overall pick in the draft where he was a 6-man in college, and just looking at ESPN's draft thing, their projected role for him as a 3-and-D combo forward. And you take these things with a grain of salt because some people improve on their own time and become better than what ESPN thinks. But I was shocked. I did not think they would go this way. I feel like, no offense to Mr. Williams, if you wanted him, you could have got him a lot lower. You could have traded down and got more picks and got him if this was your guy. I was shocked by the move. I mean, they got Zach LaVine and some others, but if he's going to come in there, play some defense, and be a big physical imposing presence, then that's what Chicago wanted, and that's what they got.
Yeah, I mean, he's really a project here, and we've seen projects pan out really well. Obviously, I mean, when the Bucks took Giannis, I mean, no one in the right mind. I mean, they just had seen some like Greek YMCA like gym highlights, basically against just him like bullying talent, and was obviously rail thin and everything else. Now you don't have the thin issues here with Patrick Williams at 220. I mean 225, but again, he's a really kind of a combo offensive threat who can also screen a lot in the right system. I could see him doing that a lot for Zach LaVine, doing a lot of 1-2 stuff with him down the road. But again, I mean, there's just a lot of question marks here. I don't want to say that, I mean, it was like a trash pick or anything like that, but high free throw percentage shooter, 83% when he gets to the line. But I mean, he's going to be at worst, he's going to be a really great wing defender, I think. I see a lot of kind of, Jeff Green-ish in him. Maybe not Jeff Green's mentality, because I mean, Jeff Green, in my opinion, could have been an 8-time All-Star or something, if he just had the willpower and energy, and had that mental side of his game. I mean, you can ask our other buddy, Jeremy Young. I've had stock on Jeff Green Island for years, even though everybody's like, why does this guy keep getting money and contracts? But I mean, I'm excited. I really hope Patrick pans out. I mean, the league is at its best when you've got your big, 6'8" to 6'10" wings that can just score over top of people. Your Durant's, your Giannis's, your Kawhi's, your Paul George's, and maybe we're looking here in 2-3 years, and Patrick Williams is that next budding guy to break out that way. Maybe starts on the defensive end, works on that 3-point shot a little, and gets there. So,
agreed. The number 5 overall pick was
the most important pick in the draft.
Was to the Cleveland Cavaliers. And Evan, I'm going to sit back, and this is your segment. Go ahead and tell us what the Cavs did and what you liked and didn't like about it.
The Cavs' perspective, they have Cedi Osman at the 3, who at times shows some great flashes. He can finish in traffic. At times he's kind of a bad from a shot selection standpoint. Great, really good developing 3-point option on the end for kick and shoots. When he starts to ISO down and everything else, that's when Cedi gets in trouble. But I think for the Cavs, what really stood out the most with them, and they also entertained offers for the number 5 pick and falling back and looking harder at Obi Toppin, a Dayton native and everything, or not Dayton native, New York native by way of playing at Dayton UD. I think what stood out for them with Isaac was, he's that high motor, every 24-second shot clock kind of guy, like they saw and fell in love with Colin Sexton a couple years ago. I mean, Colin Sexton's nickname is Young Bull. I want to look at Isaac. I mean, he is a bull defensively. I mean, he's a guy you can stick on somebody's best perimeter player every game, and he's just a freak size wise. I mean, not so much in stature, but I mean, Martin, this guy could probably like bench press some D linemen out of the gym. I mean, he's got just boulders on his shoulders. He was a big part of Auburn's run last year in college basketball before things went down. Only averaged 12.8 a game. Really, he's going to have to really work on that distance shot. He claims he's been plugging away all summer working on that. I mean, you got to hit the NBA three to be a wing in this league. So he's 6'6", in my opinion, maybe a hair undersized for the wing position. Cavs do have Kevin Porter Jr. too, that they've had in the had in the wings, and in my opinion, arguably their best kind of prospect of the last couple drafts with Garland and Sexton and everything else. So he's in the mix as well too. So you'll see some really small lineups, I think, with three of the four guys out in the court at the same time, with Love as a big and maybe a stretch four like Jetty if you're going super small. But Isaac is, again, his defensive IQ, his mentality, how he attacks practices, his size. I mean, this was the pick for the Cavs, who were the worst defensive team last year in basketball. They're undersized. Colin Sexton came in kind of hanging his hat on defense, coming from Alabama. He really gets picked apart at times, and I think it's just kind of a mentality thing. And Colin will get better at that. There's no doubt in my mind. He's got the tools and put on a lot of muscle himself in the last 9-10 months without basketball. But we sorely need that. You can't change an entire defensive scheme and shoot us up the rankings and points allowed in the paint, 3-point percentage allowed and everything else just by adding one guy. But I think that lightens the load for the others and helps them with some of their deficiencies when you have a guy like Isaac come in. So kind of a stretch here. I mean, Isaac certainly has in front of him the opportunity to. I don't think he's going to start the Cavs' first preseason game and against Indiana next Saturday. But I mean, he's certainly got the potential to 2-3 months in, he could be our starting small forward. And he's certainly got the potential to kind of take the Jimmy Butler approach, where you're a physical wing coming in to the league that kind of hangs your hat on defense. You develop the shot. I mean, Jimmy coming out of Marquette was anything but a shooter, and he's really good at picking his shots now, and was key to the Heat's run to the finals last year. But I probably was going to sell myself on whoever it was, Martin, to be honest, that the Cavs picked at 5, but I am really excited about Isaac Okoro. I can't wait to see him out there on the basketball court with our guys running the floor, helping in the passing lanes with deflections, with when you get on a mismatch on you and he's able to body up that big who's trying to exert a mismatch. He doesn't give a lot away at just 19 going on 20 here in another month or two. Really excited about Isaac.
I have nothing to add to that. If you are excited about him, I'm definitely going to be watching. I mean, I watched him in Auburn too with Bruce Pearl, which I think is Bruce Pearl's biggest draftee since being at Auburn.
Easily at Auburn. It might have been if you include his Tennessee teams too, but I can't. I'm sure there's probably somebody I'm missing off the top of my head, but this might be the highest pick he's had, even dating back to his time with the Vols.
Which is crazy. Well, more power to that. Let's go to number 6. Okay, don't want to butcher his name. Onyeka Okongwu. Yeah. He was drafted to the Atlanta Hawks. And me personally, with now the Hawks getting Rajon Rondo, I actually like this pick. The guy's strong. He's mobile. We talk about the new NBA with the pick and roll game. You got to be able, if you're a big man, to be able to defend the perimeter. And the guy can do that. He averaged 1.6 steals and 3.5 blocks per his 40 minutes when he played. So him being that big, athletic, being able to switch on perimeter defenders, I actually see a lot of DeAndre Jordan in him, and DeAndre Jordan has done well in the NBA. I just think he needs to. He is 6'9", so he's a little bit shorter on the center side. But I do think with his leaping ability and being able to guard the perimeter, he can have a pretty long career here in the NBA, being a lob catching, shot blocking type center like DeAndre Jordan, especially with Rajon Rondo.
I mean, that's going to really help them, I think, where the Hawks have all but mailed it in on their draft pick from a couple years ago, John Collins, unfortunately. And they tried to move John Collins that was kind of the lob threat of sorts, in the pick and roll threat with Trey so far in the league. But what I really like about Okongwu, and again, the Cavs, ended up moving on from Tristan Thompson in the offseason, but he certainly would have been a great pick, I think, for us as well. I mean, I see a lot of Bam in him, I'll be honest. I mean, you've got this raw, athletic freak in the post that can handle really well for a big. I mean, by all means, he's not. I mean, size wise, he's very comparable to Patrick Williams. Obviously, probably outweighs him by another 20 pounds or so, maybe a little bit longer standing reach. But what differentiates him from, I think, Patrick Williams too is just, I mean, he's just so versatile as a defender. I mean, you can put him basically probably 2 through 4 and be or 2 through 5 and be all right defensively. If he gets switched out on the perimeter on a guard or something like that, I mean, he can close out to make up for the lack of foot speed, having to chase around those smaller guys. But you're right, bringing in Rajon Rondo, playing alongside Trae Young, that's really going to bode well for him for pick and roll stuff. Where he does need to develop a little bit more is, hey, if you're catching the ball at the foul line off a double team split, or you're rim running, sometimes he hesitates a little bit before realizing, hey, I'm going to commit to attacking the basket, or I'm going to look for that kick out back to 3, or I'm going to catch that guy who's rim running from the wings down to the basket to get that extra pass for the easy bucket. So that'll come in time. I mean, he's only 19, as most of all these guys are, but he's in a really good spot, I think, in Atlanta. So I really like Okongwu and what I saw out of him at USC.
Going to the number 7th pick, I think.
Detroit basketball. Sorry, I had to say it.
His first player from overseas, Kylian Hayes from France, 6'5", Frenchman, 192. He plays the shooting guard position. I think he's 6'5", so that's always a good frame, especially for a shooting guard. Has the tools. He could play defense. He could change speeds when he has the ball. I personally have not seen him on Tua. I had to look up his highlights before coming on and talking about it because I've never seen him play. So, Evan, if you've seen the guy play, please enlighten us.
Yeah, I mean with Kylian, he kind of made a name for himself from a journalist. Kevin O'Connor at The Ringer said, "Yep, number 1 pick. He's the best option available to be drafted in this draft, 3,000%." So people are like, "Whoa, who's this guy?" And a lot of people contested that. Another 19-year-old, and kind of was the case. With some of our other picks. I mean, barely 19 here. Really dynamic guard. Lefties, I always feel like that helps you. Shout out Jalen Rose and the lefty squad. He's always propping them up on Twitter and stuff for the rare lefties in the league, because every once in a while, get in the heat of battle in NBA action, and you get taken off your feet and maybe a step slower to contest lefties just out of instinct, as opposed to people are traditional righty shooters. But average 11.6 points per game, 5.4 assists, really low 3-point shot of 29%, and almost a 90% foul shooter. So, minus the 3-point shot, really what you're looking for in a wing. He's got great court vision for his age. It's a really good pick for a Detroit team that just needs talent in so many areas. I really like, unfortunately, that's going to come with a lot of expectations for Kylian. But I also kind of like those things where you don't have to fit somebody else's system, as opposed to Onyeka Okongwu, coming in. He doesn't have to be the center point of an entire franchise with a pick. And that's kind of the case in Detroit with Kylian Hayes here. He's really great on the pick and roll. He's for his size, he's 215, which we've seen some tinier guards in there with Mr. Ball being another one for his size, height, weight wise. But 6'5", 215. He can kind of volleyball some smaller defenders who are 6'2", 6'3", and under. maybe your Fred Van Vliet's in a couple years, those kinds of things, even though Fred's a really good defender himself for his barely 6 foot size. High expectations with Killian. And there's so many guys, there's so many question marks up and down this lottery, Martin, and probably beyond, how it goes, that, if you're giving me a handful, if you ask me today, who are like 4 guys that when we all look back at this and say, how did everybody miss on this guy? I'm not saying Killian's going to be that. I would not be surprised if in 3, 4, 5 years, Killian Hayes is the best player in this draft. There's just, again, there's a lot of question marks. It's been a year like no other. We haven't had basketball in 7 to 8 months. Another overseas guy where sometimes the game footage and the talent and everything else is hard to see how and project how it's going to translate in the NBA. But Killian certainly got all the tools, and he'll certainly have the platform in Detroit to make the most of his opportunity here in the world's biggest league.
Agreed. We went from Detroit basketball to the Mecca, the New York Knicks, and every time the Knicks pick is up, there is always intrigue on who they take. And
Martin, I realized in the draft. Sorry, go ahead.
They took Obi Toppin, the college basketball player of the year from right down the road from us, Dayton, Ohio. But Evan, go ahead. You were going to say.
I just want to say, in terms of the draft. So the draft being held virtually with fans piped in and everything else. Man, I didn't realize till the Knicks picked. I miss the shocked Knicks fan video footage desperately. The kid with I've lost my first puppy, shock on his face. The Snapchat kid or whatever we called him. I miss those crazy overreactions that the passionate Knicks fans give to every draft pick, and unfortunately, rightfully so, with how they've spent the last few years. In 8 to 10 years, you go back to the Ronaldo Balkman first round picks and all those awful disasters. With the exception of Kristaps and a couple others in there, but with OB, as you said, another guy that honestly I would have loved to have on Cleveland. I think I'd put him at the top of my list. We just talked with the last pick. If you're looking ahead 3, 4, 5 years, who would you not be surprised the best player in this draft? It well could be hey, we're looking at OB with 20 points a game, 7.5 rebounds a game, shoots almost 40% from 3, 6'9", 6'11" wingspan. Part of me really thinks, and I'll be honest, as high as I am on Okoro, I could have equally has been as high on Toppin here. I mean, Martin, are we missing something completely obvious with us? We listen to the pundits too much talk us out of his slow defensive work and the fact that he's just kind of a rolling 4 and a stretch 4. It part of me just feels like it's way too obvious. This guy should be or could well be or should be the best player in this draft. Statistically he is.
Accolades he was. I think too with the modern NBA, the dude's 6'9", and he could jump out the gym. He has huge hands. He runs the floor hard. But I don't want to say, because we have to see him play, but what if he gets in the right situation?
Let's cross that off. He plays for the Knicks.
That is true too. But maybe 5 years from now when he gets traded, or he signs with someone else, or in fact, the Knicks get something on track. What's the difference between putting him at 5 and running small ball that the Warriors do with Draymond? Well, did with Draymond.
A good thing. He's not, and I don't think he projects to be anything near Draymond defensively. Defensive player of the year. But no, I see what you're saying. Small ball, right offense where you've got some other help to help in the paint. Because he's at times he can't. I don't know if he can be your. He could be your crunch time 5, but I don't know if he can be your back line of defense when somebody breaks contain is in attacking the basket with ruthless abandon. But again, part of me just really thinks, and I told some other buddies this too, of are we just overthinking this guy? The stats kind of speak for themselves. The tape we saw at Dayton and stuff too. I know the footwork's got to get there defensively. He doesn't move as is great in terms of his form, his hips, how low he gets in his defensive stance, those kinds of things. But I mean, this guy really kind of looks like Amari Stoudemire.
Yeah, and Evan, to go to your point too, because we've been saying the new age NBA a lot on this podcast, and a lot of people with the new age NBA, they want to take that one and done 18 to 19-year-old because the talking head
you're right.
More upside, but they don't want to take the guy who's 20, 22 because they don't think they have as much upside, even though you're not in your physical prime until you're like 27, 28. So he would technically have like 6 to 8 years before that. And we've seen a lot of 20, 22-year-olds who've been in the draft. I mean, we brought his name up earlier. Dwyane Wade, he was someone who was 20-something, and people weren't that too high on him, even though he was a number 5 pick. But look what he turned out to be.
Fred VanVleet at Wichita State. I mean, it's all about effort, and that is an excellent point, Martin. I mean, we've accepted some norms from our folks in charge of the NBA draft. We've accepted that you've got to have high upside, whatever. I mean, we know what that is, but sometimes we overthink guys like this based on the upside and the age, and we accept that, college basketball players who've been there 3 years, 4 years, aren't as valuable and don't project to be much compared to the 19-year-old, basically athletic bucket of goo you can get from any draft pick that you can mold into who you want. Sometimes somebody else's, at some point you got to trust that somebody else has done the molding, and this is a really, really good prospect here. So I really like the Knicks pick here. You pair him with, your Frankie Nicotine, you pair him with, help me out. Who's their really good center this year? Offensive rebounding machine.
Was it Julius Randle? Was it him?
No, but you do have Julius Randle there, obviously. But this is going to be a killer when I come back and listen to this pod. But no, I mean, I really like the pick here for the Knicks. He just brings so much, and I wonder if 4 and 5 years from now, if I'm looking it up as we speak, Zach Stolen, if he's not the guy that was just way too obvious. So Mitchell Robinson's the guy. So you have, I mean, I think too, Mitchell Robinson's a good defensive center. I mean, you can run OB at the 4 there. Maybe you can bump Julius Randle up to the 3 of sorts, but it kind of hurts you a little bit defensively. And you've got RJ there. If you want to go super big and bump RJ down to, if he's typically a small forward, into the number 2 role. A lot of good opportunity. He's a hometown New York City kid. I really like this pick for the Knicks. Martin, let's move on to the Wizards of the District of Columbia. Wizards took another guy I was really, really high on. And I watched so much film on Okoro, on Toppin, and who the Wizards took here with Deni Avdija. A lot of people want to make the comparisons of, hey, you've got a young 19-year-old, long 6'9", European kind of combo forward, and people start looking, oh, Luka. First off, Luka's basically the Slovenian or Serbian. I can't remember where he's from. I think he's from Slovenia. LeBron James, in my opinion. So he's not that. So people need to stop talking about that. But Deni does a lot of really, really good things. I mean, his court vision, Martin, is just out of this world. I mean, some of the passes he makes, the through passes through the holes that don't exist or only open just briefly in terms of running the open court and finishing. He's a crafty finisher. He really, really is a good defender at 19 too. At 6'9". He'll put on a little bit of weight probably here in the next couple years. 215 is probably a little light, but I mean that's not a spot where you're going to get completely muscled around by the wings of the NBA here. But really great ball handler, can run the pick and roll phenomenally. Really love this pick for the Wiz. to go with Bradley Beal as another ball handler for another pick and roll combination with Thomas Bryant attacking the bucket, and then a little teaser for part 2 of our podcast. Somebody else who can do a lot of off ball stuff with one Russell Westbrook.
Right. Only thing I didn't like the Luka comparisons as
too high expectations for the kid. Too tough, but he's still good.
That's true, and I don't know if my expectations are as high or higher who I'm going to potentially compare him to, just because of the aggressive offensive side did in the pick and roll. I want to compare him to probably my top 3 foreign player ever, Manu Ginobili. With the way that Ginobili used to attack the basket back in the day, and then he developed as a defender, obviously under Popovich, and the guy can pass too, and he's not afraid, and he has that swagger. And Ginobili, obviously, you saw him throughout the years. Big moments, that guy really shines. So I'm not saying he could potentially be a Manu either, but just the way he attacks the basket reminds me a little bit of Ginobili, early in Ginobili's career.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely got the early Ginobili passing game down. I mean, he sees the floor so well for 19, and that's so rare. That really helps guys, down the road too. But on the other end, it's as it is the case with all rookies. I mean, you got to prove yourself at 19. But I really like that. When I looked at the Cavs, when you look at the Wizards, they're teams that could really use a solid 3. I think both teams got their guy. At least they're going to invest the next 3-4 years in. And I think he adds a lot to the Wizards, who I think are going to surprise a lot of teams this year for the playoff run and the play-in games for a playoff run. Martin, let's go on to baby Dwight Howard with glasses at number 10, as the Suns pick up Jalen Smith from Maryland, 6'10", 7'1.5" wingspan, just physical post presence to pair with Chris Paul, to pair with Devin Booker, and to pair with the draft pick driving the center from the Bahamas we just drafted a couple years ago.
DeAndre
Ayton, yes. So I mean that's suddenly a really, really long lineup and some exciting pick and roll stuff. You've got no better pick and roll guy. Not to say he's as quick or whatever, but we all know how crafty Chris Paul is. You got Chris Paul feeding you the ball wide open with a couple dribbles to slam the hoop. Really like Jalen Smith's mechanics too as a shooter. I think that's going to surprise a lot of folks too. We saw that Maryland, 15.5 points a game, 10.5 boards, and then kind of a semi-block party in the Big Ten with 2.4 blocks a game at night from this young man. Martin, what do you think about the pick?
Oh, I really don't have that much to add about him per se. I watched him obviously because he was at Maryland and he was in the Big Ten, so going against Ohio State. I think the biggest issue, I think I brought this up with one of the other bigs, is that I don't know if he can guard the perimeter when he gets switched off on a pick and roll, because that's just the name of the game now, pick and roll. Can your big guard the perimeter? It just does so much more for your defense if they can, and he's going to be going against the top perimeter players in the league when he gets switched. So I think that is my only concern off the top of my head. But with the acquisition of Chris Paul, and I think Devin Booker is going to have a breakout year, I think this guy can really, really prosper. And floor spacing, he's a shot blocking big. That's the type of attributes that can give you a 5, 10, 15 long career in the league.
Yeah. I do question having him and Ayton. They're definitely two different bigs. Ayton's more of your physical kind of half court big, your Greg Oden in college type thing. But that is a lot of investment into two centers that early on. Now again, you can use a really big lineup with the two of them playing, just from Jalen Smith's ability to stand out and shoot a little bit. But I do worry about it, like, is there a crowded front court already, and they haven't even played one game or preseason game yet. So we'll see on the Suns, but obviously from a pick and roll perspective, Jalen's really going to benefit from having Chris Paul and Devin Booker and getting being the beneficiary of lobs and rolls to the rim off double teams and everything else. So let's move to the team that did not make the playoffs for the first time this millennia, the San Antonio Spurs, who drafted Devin Vassell out of Florida State. Devin, another really good defender, long, 6'7", 6'10" wingspan, a lot of similar things to Isaac Okoro. There was a leaked video amidst all of the, hey, we're doing scouting reports on YouTube. Martin, did you see the leaked Devin Vassell shooting form video?
I did. I saw it.
Oh, it looked absolutely awful. And now, granted, like 2 months later or a month later, he finally spoke on it. Was like, oh, I was just screwing around after practice one day, and people were like, what? Maybe he should take him. Maybe we just been way overthinking this. But I don't know if I'm buying that. One, two. He wasn't that great a shooter anyway, but he's super long. His release at 6'10", reminds me a lot of, he's definitely shorter, but he reminds me of like a poor man's Jaylen Brown from a release standpoint at times. So I think that part of his game is going to come. But really, again, really versatile wing, really great defensive effort. I think he's your prototypical Spur. He's a guy who's going to be a 3-and-D guy, and then how he develops in terms of his ball handling ability and everything else will determine his success in the league. And obviously, learning under Pop, as long as Pop's going to be there, and Becky Hammond and Tim Duncan, great system, great pick.
Oh yeah, with whoever the Spurs were going to take, I was just going to say they know what they're doing. They always find diamonds in the rough, from Manu to Tony Parker. They always know what they're doing. So maybe that's obviously giving Pop the benefit of the doubt, which he obviously deserves. So anyone who the Spurs picked, that's what I was going to say regardless. But he's good. He's good. He is good, though. So we'll see how Pop, and they needed some guard depth. So we'll see how Papa does it with him. We're going to Sacramento. We're going to Sacramento.
Yes, the best thing that has happened to the Sacramento Kings, and I shouldn't say best thing because they fired Blade, so that's probably the best thing. But the second best thing is drafting Tyrese Halliburton. Tyrese Halliburton, a 6'5" shooting guard from Iowa State, 6'8", really long. Arguably the best shooter in this draft. Another guy that, when I look at Toppin, this is the 1A or number 2 when we look at our draft. And in 5 years, you told me Tyrese Halliburton was the Devin Booker of this draft, I'd believe you.
Oh,
he's
yeah.
I'm not saying he is, but this guy's got all the tools. How he handles pick and rolls. He's not solely just a spot up shooter. Got really great NBA range. Tremendous form. I could have seen this guy going. I think it's a really surprised he fell that far. I know the Celtics were like, dear God, please let him fall to us. Let him fall to us. And thankfully he did not go to those New Englanders that are so greedy over there. But no, I love the pick. I'm sorry he has to play for the Kings, but maybe this is what finally gets the Kings turned around. Martin, thoughts on one Tyrese Halliburton from Iowa State?
With the Kings though, with De'Aaron Fox and Buddy Hield, who's also over there, it's a guards league, so you got 3 guys who can shoot and play from the perimeter. I don't know how defensively he is, and the Kings is, like you said, they're a mess. But he was a great college player, and you are right that a lot of people actually potentially saw him going in the top 4.
Yeah.
So his
There's some discussions with the Bulls at 4 easily.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Chuck would have rather had him than who they took, but that's neither here or there. But falling to 12th was one of the biggest surprises in the draft. The dude, again, he's polished, intelligent, versatile. I mean, I think he can be a great fit on the Kings if the Kings don't mess it up.
Which they're Knicks West in a lot of ways. I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy how long it's been since they've made the playoffs. I mean, like I think they do have the longest. I could be wrong. I'm just off the top of my head but I think they do have the longest playoff drought in basketball right now. So obviously the Knicks have made the playoffs with those Melo, J.R. Smith years, and but I mean they've got a lot of work to do, obviously. I think for the Kings, I think we're going to see them move on from Buddy closer to the trade deadline. I think he's made it public he wants out, not happy with his role there. Obviously they just re-upped De'Aaron Fox, as you said, and again, De'Aaron's a great player. I really like Tyrese Halliburton's upside and what he brings to the table. I mean, again, I'm not to take away from De'Aaron Fox. I know I said earlier, like the best thing that happened to the Sacramento Kings, but I mean, I think De'Aaron Fox obviously was the obvious choice there, but I think this is really, hey, the basketball gods finally smiled on Sacramento, as opposed to, De'Aaron just being available when they were there and not necessarily falling to them. It's kind of more expected he'd be around when they picked, but I mean, Tyrese Halliburton he's going to be a player, man. I don't know if it's going to be year one and it's going to be a Tyler Hero type turnaround that quick, but really excited for him. Martin, 2 more picks here to conclude the lottery, and then we'll just kind of loosely talk about maybe some picks later on that we really liked or didn't like or had to comment on. Let's do them kind of together here. So at 13, the Pelicans took Kira Lewis Jr. From Alabama.
He's fast.
Oh, he's fast. Absolutely. Go ahead. And then at 14, the Celtics took Aaron Nesmith from maybe the best 3-point shooter in the draft from Vanderbilt. Martin, comments on both those picks for those teams?
With Aaron, though, with 3-point shooting, because, it's so important in the league. So I think that was a good pick by Boston. If he would have went any lower, I could have potentially seen him going to Philadelphia because we know how much they need shooting. And with Lewis Jr., that guy is quick. Speed kills. And from watching quick point guards from back in the day, Tony Parker and like Derrick Rose and Russell Westbrook, if you can get to the rim, you can do a lot of things in this age NBA. So I think that both of these players will do well in their systems. I don't know if I see either of them potentially starting, but definitely good backup players come off the bench.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, it didn't make sense when you have Lonzo Ball and you have Drew Holiday on your team for Kira Lewis Jr. But as we saw, the Pelicans move on from Drew Holiday. Kira Lewis comes in and he's kind of that De'Aaron Fox, speed demon. Just absolutely, you got to get out the stopwatch to watch that guy go end to end quick. I mean, he's really good defensively too. I mean, quick decision maker, which sometimes too. I mean, he'll overexert himself on the offensive end, try to force something at times. On defensive end, he'll try to speed up a anticipation of a jump and get bit on a backdoor play or something like that. But I really like this move for the Pelicans, just to add a new wrinkle to that. I mean, they got a lot of question marks to figure out. I mean, they're a great team. I mean, they got to figure out continually to work Zion in. Obviously, you still got JJ Redick for another year. I mean, I don't want to say they're the island of mismatched toys, but I mean, they definitely are looking for direction. That's why they made the coaching change. That's why Stan Van Gundy's in there. I think you're going to see them more defensive minded. And Kira Lewis, I mean, reminded me a lot of Colin Sexton at Alabama just from a couple years prior in terms of how he approaches the game defensively. How quick he is to beat a guy to a spot. in terms of competing with those guards night in and night out on the defensive end. But no, I do really like the pick there. And then for the Celtics, it's kind of just a luxury wing pick. I mean, I know they need some perimeter shooting, and they definitely need some bench depth. They got that in Aaron Nesmith. And again, as we've been talking about, his 3-point shooting acumen is just really, really, really good. I mean, 52% technically. I know not a lot of games played, but I mean that's just absurd. 23 points per game, 4.9 rebounds, almost a steal and a half. 6'6" with a 6'10" wingspan. I think he's going to be something that maybe projects in 2 or 3 years can make up for what they're getting out of Gordon Hayward, who they will eventually lose. We'll talk about part 2 a little bit more. But no, another great pick. So Martin, as we wrap things up and you're looking down the rest of the draft here, let's just go back and forth on 2 guys that you're like, you know what? I think this guy can really turn out to be something with this specific team. So guys that have maybe fell to a certain spot, or this is exactly what this team needed. Who jumps off the board at you looking from the Magic down to the Celtics at 30 in the first round?
Number 21, Tyrese Maxey.
Love it.
To Philadelphia 76ers. Me personally, I think that's one of the best picks in the draft. The guy's a versatile guard, which that is what Philadelphia needs ever since they lost Jimmy Butler. He can get to the hole, he can shoot, he can operate out of the pick and roll, he can manipulate ball screens, he can score in transition, which is perfect when you're with a point guard like Ben Simmons. So I personally think that is one of my quote unquote sleeper top picks of the draft.
You stole that one from me, but good thing I've got a few other ones I want to comment on. Just one quick note on Tyrese Maxey. Obviously I had the ESPN branded shoot around workout type thing with Anthony Edwards. It happened like a week before the draft. It just kind of came out of nowhere. So I mean, we saw that too. I mean, like, he's got good form. I mean, the rest, the consistency stuff will come, but I mean, oh my word, did the Sixers need some help shooting from the perimeter? I mean, that's what's going to really open up this offense. And we've seen Ben Simmons. We've talked about this in other pods. We've seen Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid really thrive, but they thrived when they had JJ Redick as a 3-point shooting threat. They thrived when they had Jimmy Butler who could step back there and take some spot up threes and stuff too. So we've seen them address that with some offseason moves, and arguably none bigger than getting Tyrese Maxey there. For me, I got to go to the very first pick outside of the lottery, Martin. And some high school recruiting boards had him as the top player coming out of the the class of 2019, and that's one Cole Anthony.
Okay.
Look, if you're the Magic, you've been looking for a headliner. You've been looking for a guy you can put the franchise around since Dwight left, and Cole, by all accounts, kind of somewhat underperformed a little bit in North Carolina. I think with the system, it was just, for whatever reason, it just was a kind of a down year. One with COVID, but two, just kind of a down system year for Roy Williams in North Carolina. I mean, I think Cole was expected to do way too much. They just kind of, and I don't know because he can also do a lot of off-ball stuff, but they had the ball in his hands a lot. He kind of forced himself into a way. But I mean, again, this guy was arguably the best guy coming out of high school in the class of 2019. Phenomenal ball handler. Obviously, son of NBA analyst Greg Anthony, kind of helped with some of the names and stuff. I really like the pick for the Magic, who have to replace the guard they just lost to Milwaukee, DJ Augustine, now. But I really, really like the pick, and I think he could be the future of the Magic. Martin, who is someone else?
Oh, someone else who I almost was gonna say Jaden Jaden McDaniels with
I like that.
Yeah, but I was gonna say him. The dude's huge. I mean, he's 6'10", and 6'10" with a potential 8'11" standing reach.
And he's got the foot speed to be a long foot speed to be a 3, 100%. This isn't a 4. This is a 3 right here.
Yeah, so he was the other name I thought about when we talked about who outside of the lottery, but he was the other one. Who was yours? One more before we end this one and go to part 2.
For me, I think I got to go with the guard from Stanford, Tyrell Terry. 14. Okay. I mean, if you get a chance to watch some footage on him, Tyrell Terry, man, really, really beautiful stroke. Definitely smaller guard. It's 6'2". Got to put some weight on. Only 174 pounds. So kind of, I mean, size wise, very similar to Darius Garland for the Cavs a year out from Vanderbilt himself. But I mean, pure stroke, just unlimited range. I mean, dude can pull up from wherever. So really, really, really like the Tyrell Terry pick there. And that was the top of the second round with the Mavericks. So I kind of cheated a little bit and went into the so you got him to basically replace Seth Curry, who signed with the Sixers. So, or actually, was he traded there, signed there? I don't know. He's on the Sixers now. So, yeah. And that's the NBA draft. Go Cavs! Preseason starts a week from today.
All right, everyone, you heard him, and we are not done. We are coming with part 2 of our NBA conversation. That we are going to be talking about the NBA offseason and the moves that have been happening. So if you just finished this, get ready for part 2. We are going to take a little break, drink some water, use the bathroom, things like that. But NBA conversation part 2 will be coming to you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to part 1 about the NBA draft.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the L7C podcast. Be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care.